The meta in Marvel Rivals is always changing, and that's why in this video we gotta break down all the new best and worst tanks, DPS, and supports so that you understand exactly what is dominating the meta and what characters are slowly falling behind the pack. With people finding out new meta strategies and pick rates and win rates finally being revealed, we have a much better understanding of the best and worst characters, period. So we're gonna break it all down for mid to high elo. But a lot of players have been improving crazy fast with the Marvel Rivals Academy. With in-house coach scrims to consistent weekly classes, 3 a week, mine included, we get more and more players talking about reaching all-time highs and finding a dedicated community of people that take the game seriously and want to improve. So check it out in the links down below if you're interested, and I can't wait to see you there. Now, kicking it off, we got to talk about Captain America. Captain America got some pretty sizable buffs at the start of season 1, and he actually is quite a bit stronger than he was in the previous season in the meta at large, but there are still some problems with the character, and it holds him back from reaching, I think, the top tiers of the meta. There's a couple of things that are great about him. He's very mobile, he's very hard to kill. This means he can be really good in a dive composition, something that has a lot of hypermobility characters. He's going in, he's baiting attention, he's baiting a lot of cooldowns, and he's kind of opening the way for some of his other dive-based threats or even some brawl-based threats. So we could think of something like a Black Panther, a Magik, Starlord, even characters like that are going to get a lot of value with a Captain America because he's kind of paving the way for them. Now, that being said, right now, there's a couple of core weaknesses in his kit. I think the biggest one is the fact that he just doesn't do enough damage. He's not able to run a offensive dive all by himself. He needs a lot of support to make it work. There's a lot of ways to sustain through his damage and just completely ignore it altogether. And while his ultimate can be impactful when combined with other characters that want to utilize the movement speed and the constant health, alone, it's just really going to make him beefy. It's not going to win fights when there's a lot of support ults going around and a lot of trading of ultimate resources. It kind of lags behind a bit. And then the other problem to his kit is that it's a little still clunky. A lot of people have talked about having his shield not have a cooldown, things like that. I do think it's a bit clunky as well. I think the character is really strong and the win rate reflects that, but he's going to be good in certain situations when there's no crowd control, there's no Namor, no Bucky. He has dive threats to go with him, and there's some powerful synergy that's being played on the enemy team that kind of demands more respect than what he's bringing to the table. I would actually put him in B tier right now. The next on the list is Doctor Strange, a character that actually did receive some nerfs going into season 1. Did we forget about those already? But it really didn't actually mess with the character at all. This character is still top of the top tier. Right now, the meta oftentimes is just a tank, a frontline tank that is trading resources and damage in an efficient rate, capable of applying a lot of pressure to the enemy frontline and off-angle DPS, plus even apply pressure to the slightly backline supports. And Strange also has a very powerful ultimate that can just win team fights in the mid fight. And in addition to all those things, he has a teleporter that is basically ultimate level in its power, from walling off spawns to getting his team back and having a fight in a place that no other character would be able to force a fight there. It's just so powerful, and the whole combination of everything that Strange offers, between his consistent damage, his mitigation, his ultimate, the fact that he's hard to actually pin down because he can fly and things like that, so he has a lot of counterplay against certain characters like Wolverine, for instance. All of this combined just makes him kind of this perfect package that is incredibly strong just across all ranks, incredibly strong at the highest ranks of play, a cornerstone of pro play. He's just great. There's really not much else to say besides that. He's a character that I would highly recommend adding to your hero pool if you're a tank player. He's just very reliable, one of the best solo tankers as well. And yeah, he's just that great. So I'm going to slide him up into the S tier. Next up is Groot on the list, and Groot is a character that has actually gone up in stock, I think, going into season 1. There's a couple of really interesting interactions with the character that are very, very powerful. Number one is the buff to Moon Knight, and the prevalence of triple support has allowed Groot plus Moon Knight combo, or even Groot plus Namor combo, be very good and very efficient at dealing with a lot of these triple support compositions. Groot also just on some maps gets to completely dominate, gets to completely shut out certain avenues, certain flank routes, certain chokes. He gets to kind of make them his own, heavily punishing other tanks and bullying them for being slightly out of position. And also, I think he has some of the highest carry potential in the tanking role, specifically the tanks that are going to kind of play on the front line and poke and trade resources and brawl a bit. He's incredibly good at that. When you combine both those things together, it really makes this character super strong, super flexible. His ultimate is just an amazing ultimate that creates a lot of teamfight wins. And really, a Groot is only stopped, I think, by massive crowd control. That's his worst thing about him. And I think Groot has problems with only a few things. So he has problems, of course, with flyers. Flyers in general are nothing he can interact with, although he can create angles for his DPS, so that's favorable at least. He's gonna have a little bit of a hard time against Punisher and the Rocket synergy because they can just shred his walls and just break them down over and over and over again. I think if you're playing around a lot of natural cover and you're being really smart with how you place your walls, you can still make it work. It's just something to note about. And then mass crowd control. Bucky can be annoying because he's pulling you in, but I think the worst one by far is definitely Wolverine. That's a character that his presence alone is going to have a huge detriment to your existence as Groot. If he gets a rocket jump or something, he grabs you, he makes you fly up in the air and brings you back to his team, you're just gonna die. So Groot is a character that I think is gonna be very, very strong, but you're gonna have to permaban Wolverine. I mean, most people are permabanning Wolverine anyways, but it is important to note that if you always have to ban a character for your character to be reasonable, it's something to think about. It's not like that's that big of a deal, because like I said, Wolverine's banned all the time, but you literally are gonna not be able to play this character in a Wolverine lobby. You have to ban him. It has to be a character that's banned. You really don't have much of a choice, and that ban might cost you something. You know, that might cost you not being able to ban some other carry, or not be able to target ban, or not be able to shut down a certain synergy. So it does cost you, but still, Groot is an absolute powerhouse, and I do think he deserves at the very top of A. I would eke him into S, but there are a couple of other considerations in S tier, and I don't want to flood it. I do think he is like very, very close to S, if not like at the very, very bottom of S, very top of A. Very strong, very good. And he fits really nicely in this meta. Now, next up is Hulk, and Hulk is a character that has most likely a top 3 skill ceiling in the entire game. Maybe top 1. I think there's a couple of considerations there, but Hulk is definitely incredibly hard to master, and the skill ceiling on him is so freaking high. And in addition to just him being so hard to play and master, he can do so much in a fight because he gets to play basically everywhere. He can go and apply pressure to the backline and draw resources. He can go contest off-angling DPS. He can make a play on a flyer. He can do this and that and this and that, like all over the place. APM, his actions per minute, is incredible. He's doing so many different things all the freaking time. And that's why he can carry so damn hard in the hands of someone that's really good. If you're mechanically good and you have a good understanding of what needs to happen on a fight, like what needs to be pressured, what can be pressured, what needs to be contested, this is where you can absolutely carry on this character. And that alone makes this character insane. But add to that the Iron Man synergy, making Iron Man incredible. It really creates like this two-pronged threat where Hulk can contest anything that wants to contest the Iron Man, and Iron Man weakens everything for Hulk and then deletes other tanks in the neutral game. It's so freaking important that these characters are playing on the same page, but when they are, they're just unstoppable. And a lot of people have been sleeping on this synergy. I think it's actually gotten through the cracks a bit more this season because there's so much more powerful options than there were last season. But once again, this has not changed. Like, Hulk, Iron Man have not been nerfed. They're still just as strong as they were last season. They're incredible. They're incredibly freaking powerful. And some of the counters to this, like Hela, for instance, got nerfed. So it's even harder to shut it down. That being said, you can't just play Hulk and Iron Man and just expect to win. It's a lot harder than that. Iron Man has quite a bit of skill, difficulty. Hulk, I think if you don't have practice with him, which is somewhat hard to get, you're going to be pretty inefficient as a character. He's hard to play. He's even hard to just pick up. He's not going to get you a lot of value at his skill floor. But still, with him being one of the most banned characters in the game, still, you have to put him at the highest tiers of play. Even if he's not going to be omnipresent in the highest tier, he is banned in the highest rate. And also, it's not just Iron Man. I think while Iron Man heavily relies on the synergy, Hulk would still be meta and still be one of the best tanks in the game, even if Iron Man didn't exist in this game. That's how strong he is. Now we move on to Magneto, and Magneto's undoubtedly S tier. I'm just going to kind of spoil the plot here. I've been talking up Magneto for quite some time. This character just fits so well in this meta. With Cloak and Dagger seeing play more than any other support, he's a very good fold to Cloak and Dagger because you can kill her in her ultimate. You just pop your ultimate at the same time. If she doesn't get bubbled or go around a corner, you just wait for the third swipe and you just kill her at the end of it as she pauses in between. Magnetos can also get a leg up in the matchup by bubbling their own supports, which can really change the tide of a battle, denying enemy Magneto ultimates. And Magneto is just very efficient at trading resources on the front line, applying a lot of pressure to off angles and backline threats, similar to what we talked about with Strange. His ultimate's just really extra valuable right now, and in addition to all those things, Magneto fits a bit more flexibly than Doctor Strange does in ranked with random characters, because your bubble can be an enabling bubble as well. It can be used defensively, but it could also bubble Magics in, it could bubble even Iron Fists in, or Black Panthers or whatever, so you can get a little bit of extra value there. This character is extremely powerful, extremely strong. I highly recommend him. And yeah, I mean, he's definitely a top tier tank pick and one of the best characters in the game in this current meta. He's very, very good played alongside with Strange, but he's also good with a wider range of tanks that he can play with, from Thors to Pennies to whatever. He can kind of hold the front line off himself and then leave some space for another style of tank to thrive. He's just really good, and I think more people should be playing him, and yeah, he's great. Now, Peni Parker. Now, before you would know that I put Peni Parker quite low on this list, or lower. I think I put her in B tier before, and my eyes were really not opened up to this character. There were two big things that opened my eyes up to this character. Number one is just analyzing the win rates of this character, even in the highest ranks of play. This character wins a lot, and wins a lot more than most tanks on this list. She's incredibly strong when you get to play her in her spots, which is not as a solo tank, and ideally on certain maps that are not too wide open, you want to be able to claim space and deny these certain areas, and then you're going to get the max amount of value from her. Of course, she's also going to be a little bit better on defense, but Peni also, in addition to just having this really crazy high win rate, more people are discovering things about her than ever before. People like Cringe Alarm are just completely dominating with this character to the point where they're perma-banned, and more people are picking up these skills, picking up these tricks, realizing that Peni can be an absolute menace when played properly. Most of the people that are playing Peni have not really been playing this character even close to the impact ceiling, so to speak, and more things are being discovered about this character every single day, and the win rates just don't lie. I think a lot of people like to just gloss over win rates. Oh, they're not that important. But if a character is picked a lot and winning a lot in your rank or in the next rank or the next rank, that's something to take note of. And Peni is doing that. Peni is just really good. But once again, she's not going to be a solo tank character you want to play. I think she's terrible as a solo tank because you can't occupy the front line. You can't just stand there and just be a frontline threat into open space. You don't have really any form of mitigation. You can get health regen on top of your nets, but you don't want to just constantly be taking damage or getting crowd controlled, hooked in, whatever. So you really want to play with, you know, another frontline tank like a Groot, a Magneto, a Strange. But still, she's phenomenal, and in the right moment, she could completely hard carry. Not to mention this high skill ceiling on her wrap, where she can cancel a lot of ultimates and things like that. I'm going to put her at the bottom of A tier. I think she's really good. And she's also just great against divers, which is another plus to her. She just shuts out all divers, which is great. Now we have Thor, a character that I personally love. I play this character all the time. It's one of the main characters I use to climb to Celestial, and probably the character that I'll use to climb for the rest of the season. And at first I was a bit worried about Thor because I thought that he was going to be someone that was going to really struggle into triple support, who was going to really struggle with a lot of the new changes to the meta characters and what they're played and what's played and things like that. But Thor has actually shined a lot this season. I think there's a couple of reasons for that, but the first one is that he's really good at forcing bad positions. So whether you're playing against a Groot or whether you're playing against a Magneto or a Strange, you can force these characters out in really uncomfortable positions. And it makes it so that if you're in like a mirror, right, and they have Magneto Strange and you're playing Thor Magneto, you can create a lot of opportunities for your team to break up that front line. A lot of opportunities in the mid fight. That's not just sitting there trading resources and waiting for ultimates, but just literally breaking open that mid fight, like wide open, and just winning the fight for your team. Thor can do that. In addition to that, you can bait out defensive ultimates quite easily as Thor because you apply so much pressure with your Awakening Rune. you can just force supports to ult early. And that's the way to beat a lot of these powerful support ults, whether you're against triple or even double. Just forcing supports, putting them in a situation where they either die or they ult early. That's great. And then on top of that, your ultimate is actually a lot better this season. It can't be canceled by crowd control. And with new techs that are being used, like going into them, dropping your bubble, and when they walk out of your bubble, they're going to take damage and get slowed. So you immediately drop the bubble, pop your ultimate, and then you're typically going to kill them, or they're going to pop a defensive ultimate, and then you can just get out safely, reset, and then go in with your other offensive ultimates that you have in the composition. Maybe it's your DPS or whatever. Being able to clear the way for a lot of these super powerful offensive ultimates is great. And then on top of that, Thor is also really flexible in dealing with divers and things like that. He can mark certain characters and shut them down, whether that's like an Iron Fist in his backline, whether it's a Magik, whatever it is, or even like Moon Knight's on the high ground just chilling there. He can go and just die those people and force them off or kill them. So there's a lot of flexibility to this character. I think he's incredibly strong this season. He's one of my highest recommend characters. A lot of people have been messaging me nonstop about using the guide and climbing really high with Thor. So yeah, if you want to know, I have a guide on Thor that breaks down everything you need to know, and I highly recommend him this season. I think he's actually really, really good. I'm going to put him at the top of A tier, actually. I think he's about the same power level as Groot, depending on the situation. Very, very good, very, very strong, and definitely a character that I would recommend. But also, similar to Peni, though, not a great solo tank. You don't want to play this character by himself. You really want a balanced frontline. He can play with a lot of different tanks, though. I think he plays really reasonably with Cap. You could play him with Hulk. You could play him with Groot. You could play him, of course, with the frontline tanks. But yeah, you don't want a solo tank with them for sure. Now, the last tank on the list is Venom. And Venom is in some ways underrated and in some ways overrated. He's underrated because some people just don't think he's playable at all, and I just don't think that that's true. I think Venom is actually fairly strong, and he's good at creating a lot of openings in a fight. He's a very good diver. He's very hard to kill, and he's good at clearing the way. So similar to what we talked about with Cap, he's just someone that takes on a lot of aggro, takes on a lot of attention, and then clears the way for many of the characters, like many dive-based characters, to apply pressure. Even just characters that are not necessarily diving, but just applying pressure to the things that he's forcing to target him is really, really strong. And he got some sizable buffs to his ultimate and to his health gain. Like, these are big buffs to the character. Now, while this is all good, there's a couple of wrenches, I would say, in the Venom plan. There's a couple of characters that I think give him a nightmare, so to speak. So, for one, characters like Bucky and Namor, these characters are really, really difficult for you to deal with. Namor, Ice Squid, slowing you down. Bucky, hooking you, just basically manhandling you a little bit, and on top of that, like, Wolverine is also still very, very difficult for you to deal with, and then Flyers are very difficult for you to deal with. So it comes to this situation where there's a lot of characters that are hard for you to deal with, a lot of frustrating characters. You can't ban them all, you can't outplay them all, and then you also need divers with you. Like a Venom that is going in alone and you just don't have anyone that is going to follow up anything you do. It's frustrating. It's frustrating for you because you're cycling in, you're backing out after you baited out all these cooldowns and nothing dies, and then you do it again and again and again. I still think that he's in a fine place, and I think he's fairly strong, but he's not going to be, you know, top of the meta. He does have some core weaknesses, and I'm actually going to put him at the top of B tier. I can make the argument for bottom of A. I think A is pretty stacked. I don't want to stack it too high. I think he's quite a bit stronger than Cap, so I would put him at like the way top of B, and Cap like quite a bit lower, most likely. But you could also just imagine this like, you know, Venom at the bottom of A, if that makes you feel better. It's kind of the same thing. So that's what I would say for the tier list of the meta right now, for tanks especially, and something to consider. But of course, Venom is still amazing. If you're not playing against his counters, he just kind of takes over a game. Now we're going to move on to DPS, talk about the best and worst DPSs in the game, starting off with Black Panther, a character that has received quite big nerfs going into season 1. It was unclear how sizable these nerfs were, and yeah, they're pretty sizable, and they're really felt by Black Panther mains. Now, make no mistake, if you get good enough at this character, you could dominate all the way up to Grandmaster easily with this character if you're cracked enough. He's so good at pressuring supports, deleting them, and just creating situations where if he's not countered, you just win. I think a lot of players at the lower elos just don't counter properly, or they just never counter at all, and Black Panther once you get to a certain level with the character, you force a counter. Like, you can't stop this character on certain characters. You need certain characters to deal with him. That's just how strong he is. He kills you so quickly that you either have to hit an insane skill shot, which is very difficult, or you play a counter to him. Someone like Bucky, someone like Namor, someone that can actually deal with him and threaten him. And the problem, though, is now, even when you max out on his skill, these counters are really hard to play against. And I think even the not counters, you know, even just characters that are not meant to directly counter you are really hard for you to deal with. It's hard for Black Panther to play even against triple support. It's hard for Black Panther to play against just random tanks. Can be frustrating for him to deal with. And while he can still carry a lot of games, he's really going to struggle against some compositions. And yeah, he's just a lot worse than he was in the previous season. He's still going to be great with the Magik synergy. I think he goes up an entire tier with the Magik synergy, but without it, he's going to go in the B tier, I think, towards the bottom of B. He is lagging behind the pack a little bit, unfortunately. Now, Black Widow is on this list, and I put Black Widow in the D tier, I believe, for my previous tier list. But we've actually seen some Black Widows start to prosper a little bit. There's a couple of Black Widows that have made it to the highest ranks of play, and Black Widow is a character that I think has a little bit of potential, a little bit more than I thought before. You can contest a lot of flyers. There's some combos you can do with close range melee interactions, and your synergy with Hawkeye allows you to one-shot most squishies, everything besides freaking Wolverine and Mr. Fantastic with your ultimate. So you're really strong in some situations, and I think with the right skill backing this character up, you can be fairly good, but you're putting a lot of work into a character that at her best is going to be just okay. But still, I don't want to put her all the way in D tier or the bottom tiers because she's not unplayable. And I don't really want to spread the idea that she's unplayable. I don't want you to be thinking, I have a Black Widow on my team, we instantly lost this game, because it's just not true. Black Widow can provide a lot to a fight, and bursting people down to 1 HP in the mid fight is really strong. And against compositions that are not going to be able to dive you, able to directly jump on you and shut you down, you're going to get a lot of value on this character. So I really want to put her in the C tier. I know I kind of hyped her up a bit, and I'm putting her all the way down here. She's still not great. I think there's a lot of characters that are just better than her in the head-to-head, but she's not unplayable. So I need to put her down here, and it's important that you understand that she's not a complete throw pick. There is potential. If you have good aim on her, there is potential. Speaking of which, Hawkeye. And Hawkeye actually has one of the lowest win rates in the entire game across all ranks, including Grandmaster. Now, does this mean that this character is completely unplayable? No. But I do think that people are trying to force this character in situations that he's just flat out not good. So where is Hawkeye good and where is Hawkeye bad? So he's very bad against divers. Any sort of divers, from Captain America to Venom, to even Thor, to Psylocke, to freaking, you know, Iron Man, and maybe even like Starlord. Any of these characters that can take a really aggressive angle on him and pressure him out from either an aggressive angle or his backline or whatever. It's hard. It's hard for him to exist and play the game, right? What does he want to play against? He wants to play against slow, dirtily compositions that just poke and trade resources. So he loves playing against, you know, Magneto, Strange, Groot compositions. He loves playing against Moon Knights. He loves playing against Helas. He even likes playing against Punishers and Buckies. But that's where he kind of stops. That's where the buck stops with this character. He's not like a all-around god character, because he has to play so close to the fight that he puts himself at risk, and when characters can dive him or have good mobility, it's just too hard for him to simultaneously build charge and hit these crazy shots. There are some Hawkeyes at the highest ranks of play, but they're just mechanically insane. And I think that Hawkeye can actually be a good character for anybody, but you got to whip him out in the right situation. So, you know, if you go up against like triple support Moon Knight with 2 tanks, Hawkeye just demolishes that because they don't pressure him. If he's unpressured, he gets to do what he wants and he gets to get so much neutral value. But, you know, if you're just playing him all the time, you're just playing him in every situation, he's really hard to get value. So I'm going to put him at the very bottom of B tier, because there are times and times where you can play him where he's a legitimate A or S tier pick, but he's not a one-trick character in my personal opinion, and he really does struggle against a lot of characters in this meta. So it is important to know that. With that in mind, he can be good. Hela. So a lot of people might think that I'm going to put Hela really low, but no. Hela is actually still incredibly good. And this is a bit of a harder one to place, because in order for Hela to be as good as she really can be, you need great aim, and you don't really find that great aim until the highest ranks of play. So while Hela is insane, has a really high skill ceiling, and can really take over a game, there are going to be some moments where she's just not able to carry because you need to hit a good amount of criticals on this character. You need to have phenomenal aim, and before, you could get by with like passable aim. That being said, when she is not banned, like when she is not banned and the things around her are not banned, so specifically like Loki and Thor, and you play those characters in a comp together, being able to get a final blow and res 2 of your teammates, and one of them is a tank and the other one has a totem that prevents all damage, and yeah, it's just incredible. It's incredible. So Hela is just a threat by herself. She's very good against a lot of the flyers, from Iron Man to freaking Storm, and she has a really high skill ceiling. And then if you don't ban the things around her and you force that composition or force those characters, she's just, I think, broken in that environment. Yeah, she's an S tier character. That's just it. Now, if you don't have the aim, I think aim with no synergy, maybe A tier. Aim with synergy, S tier. No aim with synergy, A tier as well. No aim, no synergy, maybe B or C. Or, you know, like, you need aim for this character. But yeah, still, fantastic character. Definitely one of the best DPS in the game. Definitely has one of the highest potentials, and yeah, she's great. Now, Iron Fist is a bit of a tricky one because Iron Fist has his spots where he's really, really good, and especially when people get really good at this character, he can just apply a lot of pressure, and he's like this omnipresent threat that if the enemy team starts to run out of resources or if they get overwhelmed with pressure, he can really capitalize on that. The problem, though, there's a lot of stuff that can counter him and shoot at him and shut him down. There's a ton of things that want to target him, and yeah, it can be pretty frustrating for an Iron Fist player unless they're really aware of everything. And I was surprised that this character kind of went through the season 0 to season 1 without any buffs. And I do think that the community as a whole has kind of realized that this character is not broken. A lot of people at the very beginning of the game were like, this character is completely busted. And then people slowly started to realize that no, this character is not actually busted. There's a lot of counterplay. There's a lot of things you can do. But then past that, people realize there's a lot of potential with this character if you get really good with him. So while I think he's good and there are some compositions that he could be good in, he's not always going to be good. And there's some characters with mass CC, from a freaking Namor to a Bucky. You're going to know I'm going to say those characters a lot because they shut down a lot of these divers and they really prevent these divers from seeing a ton of play. And Iron Fist is no different. I do think he has potential, though. I'm actually going to put him in the B tier, above Hawkeye, but below Black Panther. Iron Man. Now, this is another one that's kind of tricky to place because without the synergy, he's obviously just almost not playable. He's very, very weak. Unlike Hulk, that I think is still S tier, synergy or no synergy, Iron Man is not. Iron Man is like maybe B tier or C tier without the synergy. And I really just don't think you play the character without the synergy unless you're just a psychopath. But really, Iron Man is still insane with the synergy. A lot of people are sleeping on the synergy and they're just thinking, oh, it's not that broken anymore. I haven't even been banning it. I've been playing other things and it's fine. You know, it's fine. And there's always been counterplay to Iron Man and Hulk. There's always been ways to shut it down. It's just a lot of people just banned it before you even got to play against it. And in addition to that, there's a lot of bad Iron Mans out there. Like Iron Mans that don't play proper positions. They play again, like out in the open. They just aren't really playing the way that they should. They're just kind of playing the character and hoping the synergy is enough to carry them. And it's really not. This character is not like a play it for you character. There's a lot of ways to shut him down. There's a lot of characters that can shut him down. And I think that when you get to people that are really good with Iron Man, they just can take over an entire lobby with the Hulk team up. You could just lose a game to Iron Man Hulk alone, and that's unlike pretty much any other DPS to the quite same extent as Iron Man. He's also just super good against triple support, being able to cancel a support ult with your ultimate. There's a lot about him that's really, really good, and I'm going to place him based on when he sees play, which is with the synergy. How strong is he? He's an S tier character, undoubtedly. With the synergy, he's an S tier character. I mean, I could place him in like an A or something as like a compromised placement because without the synergy, he's not that good. But it's kind of pointless to even do that because I don't really think he should see play at the highest ranks of play without the synergy. He's like synergy dependent. And with so many things in this meta needing to get banned or being respected enough to get banned, he can slip through the cracks. And when he does, he can take over a lobby if you got the synergy, if you know how to play him. You can just take over an entire lobby. So I'm putting him in the S tier because he's kind of unlike anything else. Magik. Now, Magik is a character that we looked at her win rates. We looked at her pick rates. She has the highest win rate in the highest ranks of play, Grandmaster Plus. She has an insane win rate. And I think that this character is most likely the best of the dive characters or the hypermobility characters in the highest ranks of play, maybe outside of Psylocke. I think Psylocke is like a close argument. Maybe Starlord's a close argument. But for all-in melee characters, she's definitely the best. And the reason is because she can brawl on the front line and she doesn't have to just dive. Like, yes, you can go for dive characters and kind of go for these, like, isolated targets and one-shot combo them. But she can also just help her tanks apply pressure on the front line in a way that, like, other divers might not be able to the same extent. She has a lot of counterplay against a lot of the crowd control we talked about. And her ultimate is just insane. It can one-shot a lot of support ultimates. And that's just really great, and we went over that in the ultimate tips and tricks video you can check out. But yeah, Magik is extremely high skill ceiling, but extremely worth it if you do, and still very, very good in this meta, capable of carrying a lot of games. I'm gonna put her in the A tier. Moon Knight. So Moon Knight actually has a low win rate across all ranks. Even in the highest ranks of play, he doesn't have that high of a win rate. And you might be wondering why, because you've lost to a lot of Moon Knights and you feel like Moon Knight's really dominant and you feel like his ultimate's freaking insane or bugged or broken or everything in between. And here's the thing about Moon Knight. There are situations where he's really strong and there's situations where he's really not. We talked about it with Hawkeye, and it's kind of similar. Moon Knight is a DPS that doesn't want to fight other DPS. He doesn't want to engage in a 1v1. That's not where he wants to shine. If he's in a 1v1 with a Bucky, if he's in a 1v1 with a Psylocke, if he's in a 1v1 with a Starlord, against someone of equal skill to him, he's going to lose those every single time. These are not fights he wants to fight. He wants to really be left alone. If he's left alone, he gets to farm ult, he gets to set up combos, he gets to ult enemy teams, and he gets to kill people through support ults and win team fights. That's what he wants to do. So where does he really thrive? Against 2 tanks and 3 supports, nothing's going to be able to pressure him. He gets to basically just feast and farm. Even against 2-2-2, if they're not playing DPS that want to come after him, he gets to feast and farm. So if they're playing things that are playing in the backline, you know, backline, slow poking Winter Soldiers, slow Punishers, Squirrel Girls, even Namors. These are the characters that he feasts against because these characters are not directly threatening him. He does not want to be forced into a fight. So anything that's in your backline, anything that can force a fight, he doesn't like. He doesn't want to fight even a Spiderman. He doesn't want to fight a Black Panther. He does not want to fight a freaking Starlord. He does not want to fight a Psylocke. He doesn't want to fight these characters. Even characters like Thor, he doesn't want to deal with that. Cap, he doesn't want to deal with that. He wants dirtily front lines that just sit there and trade damage. He wants dirtily back lines that just sit there and try to play off their ultimates. And that's where he's going to thrive. But if you play him in every situation, you're not going to have a great win rate with him because he's gonna struggle against a lot of these DPS comps. And I think against triple DPS comps, especially against multiple hyper mobility DPS, he is terrible. Like, I actually think he's terrible. He will just get farmed and murdered and killed, and you're not gonna do anything. And that's why sometimes you see a Moon Knight that goes freaking 2-8, and sometimes you see a Moon Knight that goes 16-2. It's basically there's situations where he's great and there's situations that he's not. And yes, if you're good enough, you can kind of outplay certain things in that. But these are like the general environments where he succeeds or doesn't succeed. Now, because the environments that he succeeds in are so common, if you can see them and you know where they are, I think Moon Knight's a great character to pick up. He's a great flex pick. He's amazing in his spots. And for all those reasons, I'm going to put him in the A tier. He's just really, really great in the situations that you want to play him. But he's not a I'm going to pick him all the time type character. He's just a character that you pick your spots with, and then you win in those spots with him. And you're just as quick to swap off of him as you were to swap to him if they change up their comp or whatever. But while a lot of people can identify where Moon Knight is good, they don't necessarily know what counters him. So it's interesting. You get away with it a lot more than you would think to just farm the entire game on Moon Knight. If they don't know to swap, they just, you know, they never will. Namor. So Namor is insane. Like, this guy is actually the truth. This guy is 100% the truth, and it's not particularly close. So we're seeing a lot of Luna Snow bans. We're seeing it a lot because Luna Snow is very strong. She has a very strong ultimate. She's a very strong all-around support, and then she also turns Namor into a super threat. And Namor with the synergy is, in my opinion, the best DPS in the game, and I don't think it's particularly close. He's just all around the most amount of pressure. He neutralizes like half the roster. He can play aggressive angles and just hit shots and just delete people. He's just all around the best DPS, in my opinion, by far. I think with the synergy, he's the best. Now, without the synergy, there's still strong arguments for him being even an A tier DPS. So when your synergy makes you the best DPS, and don't even get me started on the fact that Namor can also contest flyers, contest Iron Man, contest storms, and unlike some other characters that might be able to contest an Iron Man, he's not as easy to flush out, you know, by divers. Hulk can't flush him out as easily. He's good against just about everything. I think you can play him reasonably well against just about everything. There are a couple of gaps in his play. Notably, a character like Moon Knight might be like a notable gap. A character like Squirrel Girl might be a little bit annoying as well. Besides that, and maybe like a Punisher with rocket synergy, he has so many favorable matchups, and he's flexible in his playstyle where you can play hyper defensive and just shut down divers, or even aggressive, take these off angles and throw down squids and just get kills and get value. Namor is also a character that has a really good ultimate that charges fairly fast, can combo with Groot, can just one-shot characters if you have the rocket synergy, or just, you know, generate you picks in the mid-fight. Namor is so strong. And, you know, if I was talking about him purely without synergy, I'd probably put him at the bottom of A. But we have to consider that the synergy makes it through a giant percentage of the time. With the synergy, he's insane. I'm putting him at the top of S tier. He's that strong. And he's not even that difficult to play. He's not even that difficult to play. His skill floor is really low, so you can access a lot of what he offers without even being good at him. But when you start learning how to be aggressive, when to be aggressive, and you're starting to hit some of your criticals and your shots, you just see this guy has like almost no bad matchups. He has crazy dueling potential, and he makes so many characters on the roster just obsolete, unable to play the game against him. That's just insane. It's just insane. I'm putting him at the top of S tier, and no one's going to change my mind. So next up is Psylocke. Psylocke is a character that has fallen down a bit. There's a couple of things that I think Psylocke struggles with. So number one, her ultimate did get a fair bit worse. With her targeting bubbles and barriers now, she's not gonna always confirm kills in the same way that she once did. Before, I titled her ultimate like a checkmate ultimate, where if they had no defensive ultimate, you just got to get free value. It's not always the case anymore. Also, in addition to that, like, triple support is very frustrating to play against. Now, we talked about this a lot where triple support has very clear counters, and I don't even think it's that good of a strategy. It actually doesn't even have that good of a win rate, but people play it a lot. And playing Psylocke against triple support can be a nightmare. Even though that composition, I think, has weaknesses, Psylocke is not that weakness. Now, Psylocke has a crazy high skill ceiling, and when people get really good at this character, there's a lot of things that you can interact with. You can burst supports, you can create isolation engagements, you can create momentum, you can duel a lot of characters, and there's a lot of characters that have to really be afraid of you. I think Flyers especially really hate dealing with Psylocke. Iron Man and freaking Storm actually do not like Psylocke at all. They're even worse to play against than most traditional hit scans, because Psylocke can come from behind, come from the side, come from any angle. So at any moment where you think you're safe, you're not, and Psylocke can just kill you out of nowhere. Yeah, really, this character is kind of an all-star. Extremely good in a lot of different situations. Maybe not one-trickable like she was last season. You could still do it if you're cracked enough, but yeah, just all around really good, all around really solid. Doesn't really require any synergies to be good. I mean, she loves the Magik synergy, but some of these characters are much more reliant on the synergy than she is. I think Iron Man is a great example of that. But she's just like very solidly a good pick. Of course, she's going to be very dependent on your mechanical skill and understanding of the game. She's a rather hard character to play. I know that people keep saying that she's easy or whatever the case may be, but to play her at the highest levels and to consistently carry with her at the highest levels, there's a lot you need to do right. You need to be mechanically really good. You need to understand the state of the battlefield a lot. You need to understand advantage versus disadvantage. So there's a lot you need to do. So yeah, but if you do those things, you can really be very impactful. I'm going to put her at the top of A tier. Scarlet Witch. Now, I have historically hated on this character, and I still hate this character. No, I'm just kidding. But this character is interesting because she did get a crazy amount of buffs. Now, the buffs didn't turn this character into a new character. She still has huge gaps, huge weaknesses. Her fade is too telegraphed. She can get bursted down by burst damage in the neutral game. But there are situations where she's actually really good. Number one, Magneto synergy is crazy strong. Like, actually crazy strong to the point where it almost justifies the pick. Even if she's a liability, it's almost justifying. Not quite, though. But I think even more than that is this character is actually really good against divers. She's really good against Magik. She's really good against Black Panther. She can really harass a lot of these divers because these divers don't have the means to chase her down, and they don't really want to invest resources into her because she can just fade them multiple times. So yeah, she's actually really good in those environments, and people are finding out how to make Scarlet Witch work even in the highest ranks of play. I don't think that she is, you know, a dominant DPS or anything like that, but she has her places, she has her moments, she has situations where she's playable, and I'm gonna say I think she's actually playable enough that I'm going to put her at the very, very bottom of B tier. Not, you know, not taking the place of some of these other DPS, but still, she's keeping in there. And there are Scarlet Witches that can carry even in the high elos. And every elo underneath that, she's actually a consistent, you know, a consistent player. I think she can get quite a bit of value. Once again, I really don't want people to be looking at characters like this and just thinking, hey, they're throw picks, because they're not. They can actually carry you if you just give them a chance. So yeah. Now Spider-Man, this one is gonna be a bit controversial. Okay, this one's gonna be a bit controversial because Spider-Man is fucking ass. Okay, I'm sorry, but hear me out. Spider-Man is a character that, in my opinion, needed a buff more than any other character. And I know what you might be saying, Mills, Spider-Man is taking over my games, they're dominating, they're mopping up my backline, whatever. But as you start to climb with Spider-Man, you recognize how weak he becomes. There's so many characters that just prevent him from playing the game while he's in his act of like trying to create an advantage, trying to create a pick. He's so vulnerable at so many different sections, and there's so much downtime. So we compare him directly to Black Panther, where, you know, their setups are way different. But with Black Panther, your engagement cycle is so much quicker than Spider-Man, where it's way harder to interact with that. And even with a much faster interaction time, more base health at 300 and health gain as you're entering in the fight, Black Panther is only B tier, like mid B tier. So when you think of that, you're like, whoa, what the heck? So Black Panther is just doing so many things better than Spider-Man, and he's not even that high on the list. Don't even get me started about playing Spider-Man against the freaking Namor with the synergy. Like, good freaking luck. Now, there are situations where Spider-Man can be good. I think Spider-Man can absolutely abuse the hell out of Iron Man. Like, a lot. And he can abuse the hell out of Storm, too. A lot. And he can pull people off maps. On certain maps, he can get a lot of value pulling people off, which is cool. But outside of those things, Spider-Man is really weak. I think he needs a buff more than almost any character on the roster. I don't even play Spider-Man. I don't think I'll ever play Spider-Man. I just don't have the temperament to learn this character. I would have to basically sacrifice so many of my flex picks just to put enough Spider-Man in, like enough time on Spider-Man to like play him at a decent level. It's just not worth it to me. But Spider-Man is a character that undoubtedly needs a freaking buff. Like, he's just very weak, very vulnerable, and I'm not saying you can't climb with him. You can climb with every character on this list, but he definitely is among one of the weakest characters in the game, and I'm putting him actually underneath Black Widow. Once again, huge controversy here, you know, maybe hugely debatable, but yeah, I firmly believe that if any character deserves a buff, it's Spider-Man. He really is that weak. Now, Squirrel Girl. This one is where things get spicy because I freaking love Squirrel Girl. Squirrel Girl is so strong and so underrated this season. It's crazy. A lot of people will just auto default to Squirrel Girl and they don't really have great mechanics, and I think that that's a mistake. Squirrel Girl really rewards you for being decently accurate with your shots. If you are, you can win a lot of duels. You can even win duels with Starlords. You can win duels with Psylocke. You can even win duels with Storms, Winter Soldiers, Punishers, whatever. You can win a lot of these duels if you're not completely whiffing your shots like I am probably in this footage right here. So she has a pretty high skill ceiling, actually. Surprisingly, she does have a pretty high skill ceiling. But also, on certain maps, she just outputs so much pressure. Any close-range corridor map, Tokyo first, whatever, she is going to just output so much consistent pressure that she just forces people either to back the hell up or they die. And when people just back up so much as she forces, you're getting a whole fight for free. And then in the next fight, you're building up your ultimate, which your ultimate is way better than it was before because it bounces off and can get multiple chain bounces and just kill people. And you can generate it faster than support ults, which means that you can win a fight because you're creating so much pressure for free. And then you can win another fight because you're going to ult first. And you combine that with being proactive and being really aggressive with your damage, and it can just snowball you. It can snowball you crazy-like. And I think, similar to Moon Knight, she demands an answer. She demands people to come after her and deal with her and not allow her to just sit there and just do what she does. But here's the difference between her and Moon Knight. She can freaking win her fights a giant percentage of the time. Like, Moon Knight has some trouble winning his fights. He can, but it's pretty hard. Squirrel Girl, I think, can actually just straight up win fights, especially when she's playing in an area where she can kind of backdoor or back herself into a certain like enclosed space. Anyone that chases her in there is just gonna die. So she just can't be chased at all. And I think this character's great. I think this character is actually really, really good. And yeah, I'm putting her in the A tier. I'm actually gonna put her like right here, probably along the same side of like Magik and Moon Knight, around that area. I think she's extremely strong, extremely good, and highly underrated. Highly underrated. Now, the next character is Starlord, and Starlord was an absolute all-star last season, but there are some situations where he does struggle right now. Specifically, triple support is very frustrating for him. He doesn't burst things hard enough to be able to get isolated picks, and people are not playing isolated enough for him to want to get picks. Like, he really likes it when DPS are really spread, and people are really spread because he can take isolated fights, and he's really good at isolated fights, and that's happening less right now. And then triple support is also frustrating because there's always a defensive ult to shut down his ultimate, and you know that could be really frustrating where you're not able to get any picks in the mid fight. You're just poking, you pop your ultimate, and they trade it with their defensive ult, and you just don't really feel very impactful throughout the game. Now, people are starting to wake up to the fact that triple support isn't that great, and Starlord is starting to see more and more play and be better and better. He's also still a fantastic synergy with Mantis, Adam Warlock, and him, plus maybe another support, although I don't necessarily think you need it in a more proactive composition that is applying a lot of pressure. And yeah, I think Starlord is going to age a bit better as the season goes on. At the start of the season, people kind of figured some things out, and it was really rough for him in that meta, but now people are realizing, hey, that meta is not the greatest. Then you start seeing some other things see play, you know, and Starlord is really good against a Moon Knight. He's really good against an Iron Man. He's really good against a Storm. He's good against all these characters. He's good against the Hawkeye. Like, he's good against characters that he could duel and contest and 1v1. He's really good. He can come from a lot of angles. So because of all that, I think this character is still a heavy recommend. Kind of similar to what we talked about with Psylocke. I think they fill similar roles in compositions, even though they aren't directly the same. They kind of effectively do similar things where they're able to take a lot of isolated 1v1s and win them. They're able to play in a lot of varying positions, and they have ultimates that are really powerful if they get to clear the way for them. So very strong characters. I think Starlord gets a little bit of a leg up if he can have that synergy, because being able to resurrect is really good. And on a little bit more vertical maps, I think he also likes that a bit better. Psylocke, I think maybe a little bit better without the synergy, but it's more dependent on your individual skill, I would say. But I'm going to put them smack dab right next to each other on the tier list, right next to each other in A tier. Now, Storm, a character that is banned a freaking lot, like more than anything else, and she has a crazy high win rate when she's not banned. I think there's really no other place to put her rather than at like S. We got to put her in S tier. You know, when she's not banned, she on paper is like the best DPS, but there are weaknesses to this character that I think not enough people are talking about or not enough people are noticing. She doesn't move particularly fast. Even when she has her wind aura on, she's not a very particularly fast mover, which means that, you know, on a Punisher with a rocket synergy, you could destroy her. On an Adam Warlock, you could poke her out. On freaking Starlord, Psylocke, you could just farm her. Like, Hela is actually able to deal with her. Namor, able to deal with her. Like, there's a lot of characters that could deal with her. But even though you can deal with a character, like, that doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to beat a good Storm. Like, there's a lot of different levels of a Storm player. And just because Storm gets banned so much, I think not a lot of people get to practice her at the highest levels of play. And she can just be so dominant in the right hands because she can help her whole team output so much extra pressure. At the same time, there's some characters that just can't interact with her. And on some maps, she just has a lot of really nice vertical terrain to play around. Storm is still great. She's still one of the best characters in the game, but she is banned all the damn time. So I would highly recommend you abuse her in the low ranks because she's good. But in the high ranks, of course, she's going to get banned. So, yeah, maybe to the point where she's overbanned. Once again, there's so many powerful things right now that it's hard to ban at all. And if you ever ban, like, the same thing, like if in the dark you both ban, like, banner, right? Both teams. Now, what else are you going to ban? Like, you don't know what they're going to ban. People want to ban Cloak and Dagger. People want to ban Luna Snow. People want to freaking ban Storm. People want to ban Hela sometimes. People want to ban Magneto or Strange sometimes. People want to target ban random things like Black Panther. Like, there's just a bit too much to ban. And I think sometimes these things slip through the cracks. and take over an entire game if you have someone that knows how to play them and they're competent with these characters. So it depends on how competent you are, because a bad storm can be shut down by good players. But a good storm has a lot more counterplay, I believe. Now we got to talk about Punisher, and Punisher's another character that is a little bit strange, because we got to talk about the difference between with the synergy and without the synergy. Because with the synergy, Punisher is a very solid A tier pick. Very solid, very reliable, outputs a lot of damage, is very good against certain tanks, can punish them. But I think Punisher is more reliant on the synergy than a lot of characters are. He falls off quite a bit without the synergy. I would actually put him at the very top of B tier without the synergy, because he's still a very good threat, outputting a lot of damage. He requires people to deal with his turret. His ultimate is okay. It's fine, but it does output a lot of pressure. And his shotgun's reasonably good, right? These things are good about the character. But there are some characters that outrange him. There's a lot of characters that can dive him and kill him. And he really does require a front line to be most effective. So there are certain situations where he needs the optimal situation. But when you play him with the rocket, which is what I think you should do as much as you possibly can, Punisher with rocket really supercharges this. It supercharges it a lot, because any tank that's slightly out of position, a Venom that dives in, a Groot that's out of position, a Thor that's out of position, even like a Strange that's out of position, or a Hulk, you could shred him. You can just completely shred him, and that changes the whole game. So I'm putting him with the synergy all the way up into A tier. I know it's a little bit weird, because some of these characters like get banned a lot, and some of these characters require synergy, like Namor and Hela. I think they're really, really good with the synergy, and they're not quite as good without it. So it's hard to place Punisher, but I think a lot of people are playing Punisher without the synergy. Like, no one's really playing Iron Man without the synergy. But a lot of people are just playing Punisher just randomly, and he's fine, don't get me wrong, but he's not an A-tier DPS without the synergy. He's really reliant on it relative to other things. So I think maybe that means I need to put him at the bottom of A. But, you know, you kind of need the full context. That's why just placing these things on the list isn't the most important thing. When I talk about context of characters, it gives you a bigger picture about where things belong. And yeah, you could kind of make up your own mind about where you think the character fits relative to the synergy or not having the synergy and stuff like that. Now, Winter Soldier, Bucky, is a character that doesn't require the rocket synergy as much. He's still good with it, but not like Punisher, where it fundamentally changes where he's placed. And also, Winter Soldier is surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, pretty good this season. Because of the extra health increase, he's all around just been a very good general DPS that doesn't require synergy to be good, can dominate a lot of tanks and apply a lot of pressure, is hard to interact with and dive into, and never gets banned. I mean, like, he almost never gets banned, so he really slips through the cracks. And yeah, I think he's just like a solid all-around. Some characters are pretty polarizing, where you walk out of spawn with them, and you're like, maybe I'm gonna go up against some really hard characters for me to deal with, and maybe I'm not. I think Bucky is like a cool one, because you just are fine against most things. Like, you're cool against, if they're on dive, if they're on poke, if they're on a front line, if they're playing Storm, if they're playing Namor, if they're playing whatever, doesn't matter. You're fine. You can find a way to get value on Winter Soldier, and I think that's a generally good thing. Now, is he the strongest DPS in the game? No. And he does have core weaknesses, especially when we talk about synergies. I wouldn't pick him over any of the busted DPS if you can create those synergies or they're not banned. So that's kind of the space that he's in. And I think he kind of fits around the same power level as characters like Starlord and Psylocke right now. So I'm going to slot him in right above Moon Knight, right around that spot. I know there's a lot of A-tier DPS. There's a lot of viable DPS. But yeah, he's dead set in the middle, and he's actually pretty strong. Most likely making it into like my top 8 DPS this season, maybe top 9, but not overpowered by any means. Wolverine, another character that's pretty hard to place because he's just banned all the goddamn time. Like, people just, he went through the full cycle. Thought he was trash, realized he was actually good, actually realized he was broken, got a buff, super broken, banned all the time. So like, we've gone all the way around the world with this character. And yeah, this character is broken. He is insane, and I can't really put him anywhere besides S tier, because he's most likely the most banned character in the game. One of the most banned, I think, by the stats. He's like a top 3 most banned character in the game, and he's undoubtedly the most warping. If someone knows how to play Wolverine well, There are certain characters that you literally cannot play against a Wolverine. Like, if you're playing Groot against a good Wolverine, the best Groots in the world are swapping off. It doesn't even matter. The pro Groots in the world are swapping off. The pro Groots are not letting Wolverine go unbanned, first off, but they're swapping off. And so many characters also just have problems with him. Any tank has problems with him besides maybe Cap doesn't care. Magneto can play, you know, Magneto and Hulk have a little bit of counterplay there, but a good Wolverine can play around that even. This character is just so warping. He is incredibly warping to the point where he is a character that you cannot allow through the ban phase if you're not playing a certain composition. You have certain people that can contest him. Like, he does struggle with Namor with the synergy. He does struggle against Winter Soldier. If you don't have these characters, or you don't have tank players that are like really, I think specifically like Magneto is fine, Captain America, like I said, is fine, Hulk is fine. Unless those make it through and you have tank players that are competent and understand how to play around Wolverine, a good Wolverine will literally just make the entire game about him. Because every time he's gonna just scoop up a tank and kill them. Like, scoop up a tank and kill them is busted. I mean, that's as simple as it is. Wolverine is crazy strong, and he deserves their respect for that. So if you're not in a rank that can ban Wolverine, I think the thing that Wolverine really does like, though, is he wants to be really heavily pocketed when he gets into these moments where he comes back to his team. So I think duoing with a support player, making sure that support player gives you ample resources, and scooping a tank and bringing it back to your team and then killing them together every single time is going to win you game after game after game after game. So yeah, I mean, this character is insane. And yeah, so like, while Storm is probably the general most busted character based on win rate, Wolverine is the character that I think is more powerful and harder to stop at high elos. So I think it's easier to let Storm slip through the ban phase than it is Wolverine, because that's just how strong he is. And like Hulk, Wolverine, and then maybe like the Luna synergy is like top 3 bans in my personal opinion, because of how strong, you know, banning Luna is kind of a twofold, because you get to stop the Namor synergy plus ban her. Wolverine is just a must deal with threat. Hulk plus Iron Man is also a must deal with threat. And then you have a little bit of flexibility in like for the 4th ban, but it's kind of hard to line that up. But anyways, Wolverine's insane, and yeah, he warps the entire meta around him, so I can't really put him anywhere else besides S. Last but certainly not least, we have gotten to the support role, and we're gonna kick it off with my favorite support, Adam Warlock, and a support that I think is heavily underrated. So a lot of people are completely disregarding Adam Warlock. People are saying they should rework his kit. People are saying they should add mobility, whatever. So I played Adam Warlock in the beta, and he was one of the characters that carried me to top 100 back in the beta, and this was when he was super broken. So he actually had a pretty sizable nerf going from the beta into the main game. They didn't fundamentally change his kit, they just changed his numbers, and it was enough to reel this character back in line, go from the most broken character in the game to a character that people are literally saying you're throwing for playing, even though he didn't really get changed a crazy amount. I will give you that there are some things that Adam Warlock really struggles with. So he's not a good, what I call core healer. So he can't heal up large health totals if they get low. So if you're playing a Groot on the front line and you're playing Adam Warlock, your other support needs to basically perma pocket that Groot, because you're not going to be able to keep that Groot alive. That Groot is going to walk in one cycle, take, you know, 500 damage, and then you're going to heal him up one time, and then you're out of all your resources. It's not great, right? So there's some compositions that he's pretty bad in, and he's good with tanks that don't take a lot of damage. Tanks that are a bit more self-sufficient. He really likes to play with those tanks more. Someone like Magneto that doesn't actually take a crazy amount of damage, because he can mitigate a lot of it, play around cover. He's not going to just constantly just be eating damage, right? In addition to that, Adam Warlock kind of offsets a lot of his healing needs with pressure. So if your team is on the front foot, you're really rolling with Adam Warlock. But if your team is on the back foot, he feels pretty bad at times. And I think another part about him is that a lot of your value is tied to your mechanical skill. He's one of the hardest characters mechanically to play. He has projectile alternate fire with a primary that's like Hela's, and it's really difficult to get the max amount of value with him. And he does shine, I think, at his best right now in triple support, because you don't have to handle all these other responsibilities. Supports are strong enough and provide enough offensive capabilities, offensive value and damage, that like an Adam Warlock plus a Mantis plus like a Cloak and Dagger, I think is a great support composition, because the Mantis and the Adam Warlock synergize, and they both can be very offensive and apply a lot of offensive base value. So these are a lot of things to consider. Strong character has his weaknesses, right? But in the spots where he's good, he's really, really good. And I'm going to put him at the bottom of A tier because I don't want people to just disregard how strong Adam Warlock can be. He can be incredibly strong, but he really wants to be played alongside a support that has a defensive ultimate ideally, and a support that can maintain that front line and keep up his team. So, you know, someone like Luna, someone like Cloak and Dagger is going to be his best if he's played in a duo with a pretty aggressive composition, ideally around some people that are not going to just trade damage on the front line, so not with a Groot or something like that, or in a triple support composition where a triple support composition with two aggressive supports like Mantis and Adam Warlock, I think might be one of the strongest compositions in the entire game in ranked play. But you need people that are competent at both of those characters and are aimers as well. Now, Cloak and Dagger, we looked at her win rate, and she doesn't actually have that high of a win rate, but it's hard to place her based on pure win rate because of how much she's played. I think a lot of people fail to play this character because she's so good. Everyone knows the value of her ultimate, the output of her heals. She is really warping the meta in a large way around her. And yeah, this character is phenomenal. She doesn't need to be played in triple support. She can be played in double support, and she's still very, very good. In the right hands, I think she can carry, and even in the wrong hands, she's like fine. Like you could hide a player on Cloak and Dagger, but yeah, there's a high ceiling on this character, and I don't really think that based on her pick rate, based on how much she's played, based on how good she is, you could put her any place besides S tier. I mean, if she's not S tier, what character is? She's seeing the most amount of play. Here's the thing, though. I think more people should ban Cloak and Dagger, especially if you're not planning on playing Magneto. Cloak and Dagger is a character that it's good to force people off of it, especially if people are overly reliant on the lack of needing to aim on this character. It is nice to force those people off of Cloak and Dagger and not be able to, you know, get a very powerful ultimate so early in the fight. That's the thing that I think is the most broken about Cloak. It's not even the fact that her ultimate lasts so long. It's the fact that a lot of other characters will be at 60% and she'll already have her ultimate, which is just crazy. She can kick off a fight so fast with her ultimate. It's just crazy. So yeah, Cloak and Dagger, putting her in the S tier. Now we have Jeff the Shark. Jeff the freaking Shark, okay? And yeah, I might be a little biased right now. I'm gonna be honest with you because I've been losing to Jeffs in ranked at the highest ranks of play because these psychopathic Jeffs that play like a DPS and just can exist in your backline and never die are crazy. Like, they're actually crazy. And I think a lot of DPS kind of feed into them because they chase them around and you can't kill a Jeff. Like, you actually can't kill a good Jeff in your backline. This character has a lot of potential. He has a lot of potential, but his most potential is when he's not even really playing as a support. He's playing as like a hybrid, slightly hybrid support, almost like in an Adam Warlock triple support section where you're playing two supports and then you're playing him as a third support DPS hybrid. You might be thinking I'm trolling. I'm not actually trolling. I'm actually serious. That's where this character really thrives and really gets the most amount of value. And in that slot, I think he's actually better than a lot of DPS. I think he's actually better than a lot of DPS in that slot. Yeah, which is kind of crazy. I mean, his ultimate, just compare his ultimate to a lot of DPS ultimates. It wins a lot of fights. And yeah, he can provide extra utility with heals. I mean, he's actually a menace. I don't think he's ever going to be hard meta or anything like that. But he is a menace in ranked, and he is incredibly underrated. A lot of people don't even play him anywhere close to his ceiling. And his ceiling does require you to be quite aggressive on this character. I'm going to actually put him in B tier. I think he's actually a B tier DPS. Is what I'm going to put him. Man, you probably think I'm trolling at this point. I'm not trolling. I promise you, I'm actually being serious. It's actually serious. Those of you who know. Like, I mean, it's actually crazy. Anyways, let's move on to Loki. Loki is great. Loki is so great. And, I think Loki is a great support because he provides a lot of utility outside of his ultimate. A lot of offensive utility, a lot of defensive utility with his totems that are like ultimate level in power. Then he has an ultimate that he can use in flexible ways, whether it's to copy an offensive ult when enemies don't have defensive ultimates, or just copy a Cloak or a Luna ultimate just to chain those off. Both those options are fantastic. Like, if you can copy your Storm ult and just wipe them when they have no defensive ults, that's great. And if you can identify those moments, that's great. But a lot of the time, you just go Cloak ult into whatever other ult into back to Cloak ult. It's just insane. So yeah, Loki is just a really, really great character. I think he can hard carry harder than probably any support. I really do think this character can hard carry an insane amount. And even though I think in a meta that was better suited for him, Adam Warlock might be able to carry harder, I think Loki is just better suited for this meta right now. I'm still going to put him in the A tier because I don't think he's all around something that you can play every single game. He's going to play a little bit better in triple support, although I still think he's actually fine in like a Cloak Loki or a Luna Loki composition. You just get, you know, double support ult and you get to play a secondary DPS, so you get to apply a lot of pressure. I think that's fine. So yeah, I'm actually going to put him in A tier. He's very solid, and yeah, but as far as like deadlifting a game, I think Loki is maybe deceptively one of the hardest carry characters in the game. Okay, now we're moving on to Luna Snow, and Luna Snow is a S tier character. A lot of people have been sleeping on Luna Snow when they shouldn't be. Luna Snow's great. She has maybe the strongest synergy that sees play consistently. It's not the strongest synergy in the game, but I think Namor and Luna Snow slip through the cracks more than, you know, the synergy around Iron Man, for instance. But maybe it shouldn't, because Luna Snow is great. Her ultimate is very, very strong. And it's harder to counter than Cloak and Dagger ultimate, because Magneto ultimate can't cancel it as reliably. He needs like max damage absorbed, and he needs to wait the full duration to even have a shot at it, or for Luna Snow to take a ton of damage just in her ultimate. It's just not very reasonable for him to do it as easy as he can Cloak and Dagger, if at all. And then of course the Namor synergy is just so good, and I think Luna Snow plus Namor kind of forces out so much of the roster, just prevents them from being able to play the game. And yeah, and she also just is very good at healing divers too, being able to put you know, a snowflake on somebody and then heal your tank up, heal your Groot up, heal whatever up, and heal them as well. Combined with a strong ultimate, combined with 275 HP, combined with the crowd control that's very, very strong. There's a lot about this character to love. Now, she is aim dependent, and I think a lot of people shy away from her because she is mechanically pretty demanding on a lot of what you're doing, and it can be really stressful to do all that. But she's insane. She's so good, and she fits so well in the meta. I really do think that she is the strongest support right now. Even though Cloak and Dagger is seeing more play, I think a lot of people are filling and hiding behind Cloak and Dagger. Not to say that you can't be amazing at Cloak and Dagger. I'm just saying that people that fill are typically going to fill to something that is a little bit easier mechanically. So you don't have to think about too many things. You don't have to have a lot of practice. Luna Snow requires more of a specialist, someone that actually grinds the character. But when you're really good at this character, she's carrying, baby. She is carrying, and she's so good. Mantis. So this character is being slept on a lot. And by the numbers and by what she's picked, she should not be in S tier. But I'm going to go out on a limb here and put her in S tier because her win rate reflects that she should be picked more. And she's still insanely strong. So strong. She's one of the best supports to pair with characters like Luna Snow, characters like Cloak and Dagger. And it's really because she applies a lot of pressure. She can rack up a lot of damage. She can enable a lot of plays. And her ultimate is a combination, a flexible combination of defensive and offensive. It's not going to be able to defend against everything, but it's going to be able to defend against a lot of things. And it is going to be able to be aggressive and win you fights. And I really think that Mantis thrives in both environments. She thrives in a situation where you're not playing triple support and you're trying to take more proactive fights and engagements and not make the whole game about support ults. That's what triple support wants you to do, is slow the game down to a crawl, make the whole game about support ults. That's not what Mantis does. She opens the fight up and makes the fight more active, more proactive. So she's really good in these dual support compositions, alongside a support that can handle some of the more bulky needs of a healing, you know, bulky needs of some of your tanks, the mass health pools, right? She's also surprisingly good in triple support compositions, which is a little bit counter to what I said. But the reason that she is because she plays a pseudo offensive role, a pseudo DPS role as well. And that's why I really love Adam, Warlock, Mantis, triple support compositions, because you have the means to force out ults in the neutral and create plays in the neutral because you have enough damage, you have enough pressure, but you also have these really powerful ultimates, and you can also trade with ultimates in a sustained battle. So you can kind of do a little bit of everything, right? But really, this character is incredibly underrated. And while I don't think she's the best support in the game, she is so much less played and less picked right now across all ranks than she was last season, when last season she had one of the highest win rates and one of the highest pick rates, and now she just doesn't have the highest pick rate, but she still has one of the highest win rates. It's like people saw the mobility nerf to her, and they were just like, yeah, we're just going to stop playing Mantis. But this character is crazy. I'm going to maybe die. I'm going to be screaming on a hill talking about how strong Mantis is. But, like, I'm telling you, this character is nuts. This character is crazy. People are climbing with this character, and you're going to see how many people are going to get all the way to the highest ranks of play, all the way to top 500 with Mantis. You're going to see how much pro play this character is going to see, because she is going to see it, because she's good. She's still really, really freaking good. And if you want a support to climb and carry, I know that a lot of support players feel like they can't carry from the support role. You see all your teammates make all these bad decisions. They make all these big mistakes, and you just can't do enough to carry. Mantis can carry. She can freaking carry. I promise you. So definitely S tier. Now we're talking about Rocket. Rocket. This is gonna be controversial, okay? This is gonna be controversial, but I've been kind of promoting it consistently. Rocket's insane. He has one of the highest pick rates, and he has one of the highest win rates, even in the highest ranks of play. And you might be like, oh, it's because of the Punisher Winter Soldier synergy. No. Both those characters have like a 49% win rate, Winter Soldier and Punisher. Rocket, he's sitting at a 53% plus. 53% plus. Now, you tell me, do those characters need him more than he needs them? Because he's winning a good amount of games that those characters are not seeing play in. Rocket is crazy strong. And you might be like, why? Amplifier sucks. And Rocket doesn't have defensive ults. And I always see my Rockets do nothing. Why is Rocket good? Well, first off, Amplifier is actually stronger than you think. It's an offensive ult that can bait out support ultimates and win you fights. It's not as flashy and doesn't feel as good as surviving everything as a defensive ult, but it is fairly good. I'm not going to say it's anywhere near as good as defensive ults, but it's passable. More importantly, though, these are the two things that Rocket players can do. Number one is not die. Rocket players die less than any other supports, and I think just the value of being able to live is unparalleled. A lot of supports are just, they're kind of at victim to things that something walks out of spawn and they just die to it. They just get killed. They get killed by a Hulk jumping on them and an Iron Man shooting them from above. They get killed by a Black Panther diving them. They get killed by a Thor just on them. Rocket just lives. He just freaking lives like so much. He just lives. That's it. It's hard to say how valuable that is, because it's the entire value. Like if a Rocket has a fourth of your deaths as a support, even if he's doing worse when y'all both are alive, he's just alive more. And that's so important. On top of that, BRB, his res beacon, is such a strong ability that people don't really feel the impact of. So to give you an example here, when you get ulted by something random, I don't know, let's just say you get Hela ulted and you lose the game because you don't have it. You lose the fight because you don't have a defensive ultimate. You think, wow, if I would have had a defensive ultimate, we would have won that fight. We would have won this fight against this Hela ult because we have this goddamn Rocket, we're going to lose, right? We're going to lose this game. We're going to lose this fight because we don't have a goddamn defensive ult. We just have goddamn Amplifier, right? Everyone here has seen that clip from Tim the Tatman, right? But here's the thing. If the opponents get first pick, you probably would have lost that fight. When their Hela walks around the corner and freaking two taps your Moon Knight and, you know, you're in a 5v6 and their team just rushes in, you would have lost that fight, and ultimates wouldn't have even mattered. You just would have lost that fight. Like, the amount of time a first pick generates a one team fight is extremely high across, you know, every hero shooter. And from my analysis, Marvel Rivals is no different. Getting someone, like, having a teammate die right away, you're probably gonna lose the team fight, and ultimates didn't even matter. It didn't matter. You didn't have time to build them. You just lose, right? And BRB saves you from that. BRB turns a fight that you could have easily lost, you were very likely to lose on paper, into a fight that you get to fight. You actually get to fight. You actually get to build ultimates and trade resources and maybe make a play. You actually have a chance in that fight. Now, do you realize that that is what saved you? Not necessarily. Do you recognize that, you know, that defensive ult that protected you might in some situations have gotten the same value as that res? You might not see that. So there's a lot there that I think is really important to kind of piece together. You combine all those things together and it just shows that Rocket's great. I know I'm kind of going on and on here, but I need to make my case because there's still a lot of Rocket haters. I think people are kind of waking up to this character, but there are a lot of Rocket haters. Now, here's the weird thing. I think he's an A-tier character. Underneath Grandmaster, Rocket is better than both Loki and Adam Warlock. He's better than them. Above Grandmaster, he's worse, but still A tier. That's where I would put him. So depending on where you're placed, I think he's around like A tier, but it's above or below. He's still playable even in the highest ranks of play, but I don't think he's as good as like the peak Warlock, peak Loki, right? But still very, very, very strong, very, very underrated. Okay, we're all the way here, and I missed this character, so yeah, it's gonna be fine because we're just gonna put timestamps. But this is Reed. This is Mr. Fantastic. I didn't place him. This character's fucking trash. No, I'm just kidding. Man, Mr. Fantastic's hard to place. He's hard to place. He's hard to place. I'm gonna put him all the way in B tier, and he really is played as an off tank. Like a secondary tank is mainly where Mr. Fantastic is seeing play and should be seeing play. He doesn't really play a DPS role. He doesn't really have the capability of other DPS, but he's very good at stopping dives. He can cycle in and constantly create frontline pressure. And I think he plays reasonably well with the frontline tank. In spite of all the things that he does well, his ultimate is just atrocious. It is undoubtedly the worst ultimate in the game. It is actually unusable. You're going to die a lot of the time while you're in it. And if they just buffed his ultimate, he would be quite a bit better. I think he probably deserves more buffs than that, but his ultimate is the gaping hole in his kit. So yeah, I really do think that that's holding him back the most. So yeah, he's a B tier pick. But you know, even though I'm putting him here, keep in mind that this is relative to the characters that are here. Like, Jeff is definitely, like, better than Mr. Fantastic for sure. But, yeah. Anyways, let's talk about Invisible Woman, the last character on the list. Invisible Woman is really, really good. Really strong, really solid, a very solid pick. Powerful defensive ultimate, powerful utility. She does kind of lag behind a bit comparatively to Luna Stone, Cloak and Dagger. These characters are, I believe, a slight step ahead at doing similar things. And then Mantis does a different type of thing that she deserves S tier. She does not do those things, but she's still really good. I think she's still really strong. She has a high carry potential. She can carry in the neutral. She can shut down tanks. She can shut down strange ults. Her ultimate is fairly solid, even if it's a bit easier to counter than something like a Luna Snow ult. She's good. She's very solid, and I think people are going to get better with her over time. As such, I'm actually going to put her in A tier, but I'm going to put her slightly above Loki, or about the same level as Loki, but above Adam Warlock and Rocket. She's very solid. I just don't think she quite stands up to the top 3 supports. Once again, Luna Stone, Cloak and Dagger in a similar capacity, and then Mantis in a much different capacity, but still very, very strong. She's still very top tier, but not quite as top tier. Keep in mind, none of these supports are bad. Like, I didn't even say, like, Jeff is the worst quote-unquote support, but he's actually insane as, like, a DPS support hybrid. So, supports are just very strong in general across the board. And yeah, I think a lot of things are very powerful this season. There are some outliers, some weak characters in this game. But yeah, I think that we'll probably get a buff coming soon, and you can kind of see where these characters move to after that. But yeah, this is my updated tier list. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments down below. Definitely smash the like, subscribe if you enjoy the content. And if you want to improve, definitely check out the Academy. Link will be in the description. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.